Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. You made it. If you're here, if you're watching this, then you've made it this far, and that is something truly to be grateful for and to celebrate. So, how is everyone? Welcome back, everyone. I really didn't actually want to stream on YouTube. I wanted to get set up on Twitch, and I'm still in that process, but it just feels too much not to at least hold a space, right? And just check in. I don't have anything in particular. I don't have the usual transmission set up. With a reading and to go into the astrology, because we've just been over the astrology of this time over and over, right? There's been the lead up, there is the follow up with this week that's unfolding, and there are a few things to be very aware of in terms of the astrology. Uranus is going to station direct, okay? Talk about trickster energy coming back online, and a shifting landscape that might become much more real than an internalized situation where your internal landscape of values and worth was really shifting for the last couple of months, and it's about to turn back on into the outside world. So there are things astrologically to check in about and to pay attention to. The North Node is going to come into Taurus also on the same day that that Uranus is going to station direct. I mean, the sun is about to go into Aquarius, probably its weakest astrological position, because it's opposite its home, which is Leo. So this is why this time of year is always so difficult unless you have strong Aquarius already, or you really vibe with the idea and really finding your sustainment through devotion to humanity. It's no accident that Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a national holiday here in the United States, a federal holiday, right, is right around the time that the sun moves into Aquarius, right? This is where we find our sustainment and our individuality and our expression through the collective as a whole. So but this is not where the sun functions the best, and this is why this time of year, especially in the northern hemisphere, in the throes of winter, when it really starts to become much more about the strength of the human collective as a whole, right? And this is where the rubber really meets the road. So there are astrological aspects that are going to be very relevant to this week, but we still have the full moon. We haven't even gotten to the culmination yet, which is the full moon in Cancer, which will be happening this evening here, Eastern Standard Time, about 6:45, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so a little bit earlier on the West Coast, later into the night on the other side of the pond, and we still have to get to that. So there's plenty of content that goes along with the Pleiadian Revival, and this is really what I want to speak about mostly today, is a couple of, well, I wouldn't say a couple of, just aspects of the Pleiadian nature that I don't think I gave enough space and time to in the report that I gave. So it's called the Pleiadian Revival. If you haven't seen it already, it's posted on YouTube, posted on BitChute. That just goes into the astrology of the next couple of months while the North Node is in the territory of the Pleiades. So we go into ancient astrology, we go into astronomy and all the connections there, the starseed lineages, the markings in the chart, and then look at the astrology. So that is already available to utilize as a resource. And of course, the actual astrology report for this week and the full moon in particular, because the full moon is not only very Pleiadian in terms of the markings in the astrological chart, but the crystalline planetary grid is where Pluto and the sun came into a conjunction in terms of a degree. So it is just chock full of galactic goodness right now, and it's very magical. Like it is off the charts magical, which is not synonymous with magic, is, as we know, is not synonymous with good, right? And this is something that we have to take very good care of ourselves around and be cautious of is the high intensity of these times and how easy it is to be taken in, taken over, misled, led astray, or just be, have this incredible energy be misdirected in some ways. And I think that that's something to consider as well. But the part about the Pleiadian nature that I think is very important to address, actually first, before I even get into like the meat of, or the stock here of what we're going to talk about, let's check in with the chat. I want to see how people are doing. Oh, wow, I haven't seen you in a while, sir. How are you? I see you put out a lot of content as well, and that's really exciting. How are you doing, right? This is incredible times. And if you're on BitChute, you don't get to see the chat, unfortunately, once we move over to Twitch. I mean, that's what the whole platform is really about, is the interaction. So I'll be looking forward to that. But I want to take you through a journey of the weekend, right? Because there's just too many things. There's been too many things over the weekend that have just popped off, literally, right? Not the least of which is this massive, massive eruption. Volcanic eruption and a shock wave that got felt, across the entire continent from that island in the Pacific, and the impact that it had on all the inhabited areas around it. The fact that we have this, we got snow, right? And I wouldn't call it a snowpocalypse, but there will be shoveling after this live stream that needs to be done. There's definitely some depth to the snow outside of my house, but with this full moon right here as well, I mean, it's definitely going to be full, and it's definitely going to, I mean, it feels like it's ready to burst and hasn't even gotten to its fullness or its culmination yet. And remember, the moon is regardless if you're looking at sidereal or Western astrology, it is at home in Cancer. So the feels are massive, the intuition is substantial, and the sensitivity seems to be very strong. So first, let's start with, I want to start with a little bit of a journey of just some facts, just some dots from the weekend. I want to make sure that I can even open this. Yes. And of course we will look at the astrology, because I think of the weekend, especially because I want to show you some things, and maybe there's just nothing to it. Maybe there's just, maybe this is just the progression of things and it's not anything more than what it is, right? So, but let's look, because what I want to show you as we go through this is we're going to take some time to look at the Schumann, because I think that there's some things going on here. I think there really are some things frequency related and energetic that are going on here. And whether they're intentional or from the sun, which really speaks to today's marquee tarot reading, if you haven't checked that out, but it's the sun, it's the sun, it's the sun. So the climate and the weather patterns are created by our sun, right? Or the sun is responsible for those forces. And it did some interesting things over the weekend, and other interesting things happened over the weekend. And not the least of which was yesterday, when the Sun and Pluto came together in a conjunction at the Pluto return of the United States, at these critical galactic degrees that have to do with the crystal structure, the crystalline grid structure of the planet, the energetic structure and scaffolding of our planet, and how powerful it is to have the Sun and Pluto come together in this really cathartic, powerful connection, and then to have this full moon, it literally, it exploded, right? That eruption, regardless if it was natural or if it was, assisted in some way. Either way, it's part of a larger unfolding pattern here. So, like I said, these are just dots. I'm not here to tell you what is happening or what isn't happening, because I don't actually know. But lots of people, including myself, have had a lot of really very specific and unfamiliar, or maybe not unfamiliar, but experiences and a lot of tragedy, right? And that's the part of the Pleiadian nature that didn't get as much attention as I think it's going to need, and how connected the Pleiades star cluster in terms of an astrological read, just in general, outside of the starseed nature, is very related and has been to tragedy. A sense of grief, bereavement. And I did speak on it because in the chart, if you have the Pleiades, I mean, this is oftentimes makes you an incredible counselor in these ways. But death and tragedy usually follow close behind or very close to the Pleiades star cluster in an ancient astrological way. So there are people and really a lot of exits right now. And one thing that I had a conversation with a colleague about a lot of this stuff over the weekend, and what it reminded me of is when my dad's brother passed away in March of 2020. It was very sudden. It was from the first wave of the pandemic, right? But his death was very sudden, to the point that he didn't even know that he had died at first, right? He needed. It was very sudden. Like when he left his body, he was just like, "Oh, that happened," and it was at the time that Venus was in conjunction with the Pleiades. And I remember making a very raw and very candid Facebook Live in that moment, because I knew I needed to capture how everything was feeling at that time. And one of the things I remember saying, as I was just like sobbing, is that he was called home. And I think when Pleiadian openings happen, especially right now, I mean, with the full moon and the nodes, and then everything surrounding all of these starseed connections, especially with the North and South node and the North node at the Pleiades, just know this is going to be a theme, like, and not to be doom and gloom, but people are going to be exiting, and they're going to take their opportunities to exit when these astrological alignments are happening. And it seems to be actually somewhat consistent. So, tragedy and death and bereavement and grief and sorrow do tend to follow the Pleiades. So again, there's something to the Marquis Tarot in terms of the second line, which I really, regardless of what it is that's falling away, there will be a brokenheartedness or grief or sorrow around these issues that will be clearing a lot of karmic contracts, will be finally putting a lot of generational stuff to rest, I'm sure. But I wouldn't, there's just too many experiences that I am accumulating and consolidating in terms of people one-on-one conversations, that the attention needs to be brought to this. So just be aware of that in terms of the Pleiadian nature and just what the next couple of months are going to hold with this window open. So, because like I said in the video, there's a lot of investment into shaping the narrative of who these beings. I mean, you have 7 stars. There's like thousands of stars in the Pleiadian star cluster. It's just those 7 are the brightest. And so there's multiple star systems. They are, how many planets? You know what I mean? Like, to make some sort of generalized statement is about what this means is kind of goes against the whole point, which is we all have to figure it out for ourselves. And that's really when we've all done that, and we're all in alignment together, that's when we have unlimited power, right? In a empowerment type of way, not power over. So what I want to talk about here, come back. What I want to address here is the energetics over the weekend and what the sun was up to. So we don't have the 14th, which was Friday, and that's when Mercury stationed retrograde and asteroid Ceres, in conjunction with the eclipsed full moon at the Pleiades, stationed direct. Asteroid Ceres is the goddess of agriculture and the grain, seasons, right? What else? What runs our seasons on this planet? It's the sun. Right? Climate is, controlled by the sun. right? And I mean, lots of other factors, but it's really the sun and the sun's position, the sun's activity, and certainly in a relationship with the planet itself and the electromagnetics, but it is the sun. And so Ceres is the aspect that responds to that and explains why there is a cyclical nature to our seasons and our growing season. And at the 28 degrees of Taurus, this is very much about letting go of the woman part of the cycle and moving into the crone phase, right? That it is the nature of nature to grow and progress and eventually return materially to back to something else, but that's not the end, right? Because a cycle completes and you change and grow and evolve into something else, you have the opportunity to start over again. It's a woman going through menopause. That's really what that degree is. And so Ceres is entering the crone phase now and is just whenever there are big planet, like actual geological or geophysical things that happen, it always feels like that Ceres is involved because she seems to inhabit or embody the spirit of the actual planet itself. So that's just my opinion, though, right? That's just based on my observation. So anyway, I know this is kind of a hodgepodge. I didn't really plan on being on here, so bear with me if it seems a little bit inconjunct right now, but I do have a very loose outline because there's things that I just want to validate if people are feeling like, what the hell is going on? And like the intensity of things, because it's really measured in events and in the astrology, of course, as we've been talking about for weeks and months, really, but also, too, you can see it reflected in the activity of the solar weather and the geophysical impact. So we don't have the 14th, but we do have the 15th and 16th, and then today the 17th. So we know that at 5 p.m. Universal Time, 5 to 6 p.m. Universal Time, the Schumann spiked up to, 62, right? After it had been at a pretty, base level. And you can see that the quality shot up at that point and the pretty consistent lowering of frequency at the same time, except on all levels, you can see that there's a significant drop in each 4 lines at that same time. Something else that's important to pay attention to, if I can hopefully find it, is the geomagnetic unrest. So I'm going to show it to you real quick. So this, again, the 15th, the 16th, into the 17th. So when it's red, that means there's a lot of electromagnetic activity, right? There's a lot going on in the ionosphere, in the magnetosphere, right? This is, they call it the Kp index, and it just measures the amount of activity in the Schumann, right? And so you could see the 15th and even the 16th had a lot of activity that was going on. But if you look at, if we go back here, you can see that on the 15th, there was a big spike in the Schumann, and then the 16th, it was pretty mellow up until... and then it kind of did some weird stuff in the afternoon into the evening, and then there was this weird spike yesterday. Everything else was kind of settling down except for this one green, and it's on this one too. So I think that's interesting. I don't know enough yet to know all the nuances of what that means, but I'd like to. But we do see that there's one big loud. Now, we know that Tonga also erupted, right? The volcano on the island of Tonga erupted on Saturday. So 5:30 p.m. local time, that is, it's 10 hours ahead of where UTC would be. And so, or 10 hours behind, right? So 5 p.m. UTC, you're looking at like 6 a.m. So, oh man, is it the other way around? I think it might be, no. Either way, it's not completely lined up with the eruption, this huge spike, but it's pretty close. It's the same day that the eruption happened where you see this really big spike in amplitude and a really drastic lowering of the frequency itself at, that same day. Now, if we were to go to spaceweather.com and kind of track what's happening here from the 14th on, I'm gonna read it, but you can read it yourself. You can go to their website and look at it. Make sure that my mouse here is, there we go. So this is from the 14th at spaceweather.com. And so what does it say? A minor G1 class magnetic storm is in progress during the late hours of the 14th, right? So we know this is the day that Mercury stationed retrograde. This is the day that Ceres stationed to go direct, asteroid Ceres. And the moon was in Gemini and it squared Neptune, right? It was opposite Mars around the time, I think, of the actual, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it might have, the moon in Gemini opposite Mars might have been around the time of the eruption. Anyway, that was that was the 14th. Anyway, sorry guys. So there's a G1 class magnetic storm on the 14th. The cause? A crack is opened in the Earth's magnetic field. No explanation, no even consideration of why or anything. Just says solar wind pouring through the gap ignited the storm, right? And then there's, on the same day, there is also an M2 class solar flare, right, that comes off the sun. So the explosion was really big. It was not facing us, but it still had an impact, I believe, on us in terms of our own atmosphere, and I believe that's the case. So let's see. Yeah, it did. It definitely had, you can see here that it impacted us. All the colors around the map just show you that there's X-ray, or a pulse of X-rays ionize the top of the atmosphere, right? And so there's real impact, even if the solar flare didn't reach Earth or wasn't directed at us. It still was so powerful coming off the sun, as you can see here, that it was able to have that kind of impact. So if we go back, though, and we start looking at the rest of the weekend, so we'll go to the 15th and see. So we already have a hole in the magnetic field that's just not being explained at all. There was a crack, and maybe that's normal. I'm not entirely sure. So on the 15th, we have a Cme Alert because it may be heading for Earth. That's a coronal mass ejection. It was hurled into space on the 14th by an explosion in the magnetic canopy of a sunspot, right? So now we have an X-class or an M-class solar flare. We have an opening in the crack of the Earth, or in the magnetic field of the Earth, for seemingly no reason that they will explain, and there may be a CME from a solar flare that happened. So much of it will miss Earth, but there may be a glancing blow late on the 16th to midday on the 17th. That may be what's happening right now. So you can see where Tonga explodes. You can see it on a satellite from space, right? And this was on the 15th. That is just remarkable. And yeah, this is, I'm not sure if this is local time to them or local time or whatever. I don't know what time the satellite is measuring. But, so yeah, that was Tonga. And then surprising forecasters, a crack opened on the 14th, and so solar winds were pouring in, and they got all kinds of good pictures for auroras. So again, this is still being brought up that there was a crack in the magnetic field that was letting solar wind to just pour in. 15th, oops, what is that? Oh, I see. So the 15th is when Tonga, right? And we have that big spike in the Schumann. So here is yesterday, another CME might be heading for Earth, right? It's the same explosion they just talked about yesterday, and most of it will miss. We may get it today, and this is where the shock wave of the volcano, you can see the white dots. If you can see that animation, you can see that it's tracking the shock wave all the way across the continent, the two continents really, just from west to east. The white dots mark the arrival of the shock wave during the 5-hour interval. Wow. So 11:30 to 4:30 UTC on the, oh, that's interesting. So it wasn't until after the shock wave made its way across in that 5-hour interval, then there was the big spike in the Schumann, in the amplitude. That's really, really interesting. So that's the big news. And then again, the same thing, the geomagnetics, the G2 class geomagnetic storm that came from the crack in the Earth's magnetic field. Now, where did that come from? I don't know. I don't know enough at this point. It would take a little bit of research to see if that's a common thing, but whatever's going on, it's the sun. I've seen videos of two suns rising in the same time in the sky. I saw another video that looked like the sun rising in a fast forward. I mean, it happened in a matter of seconds. It was probably a missile, but it looked like the sun. I know China has an artificial sun that they're firing up. It's very possible that Korea, I think they have one too, an artificial sun. I don't know what's going on. People are reporting chemtrail spraying like crazy. I've seen it too. People are getting really sick. And what is really, really concerning is, people having experiences or being connected to other people who are having experiences where they are flipping on a dime, right? It's like a switch is being flipped and they are agitated and angry and combative. I think that there is whatever's going on, there's a real impact on people's thought processes, their emotional processing, and their actions related to those things. I think it's really important that we're speaking on that too, especially when we're talking about cracks in the electromagnetic field, right? Like what is pouring in other than solar wind? I think that's something to consider as well. Take good care of yourselves. That's really what I want to address with people. Dealing with old pain. So I'm at the chat right now. Dealing with old pain, it sucks, but the process eliminates fear. Such an incredible observation. Alex K. Interesting dreams and lots of sleep lately. Yeah, the dreams have just been off the hook. I have also been sleeping very deeply, very well. I wake up rested. I feel really good, and I really hesitate to share that just because I'm like, I don't want other people to feel bad if they don't. I've spent plenty of time feeling like shit, and that's definitely not how I feel right now. So, but I also know that whatever's streaming in is just profoundly powerful. Very interesting dreams, absolutely. So, I don't really have anything else to add right now. Alex K., you were in my dream last night too, actually. I'll send you a DM about that at some point. The process eliminates fear. I think that's really important to remember because it's something that's already happened. Right? And so what's there to be afraid of when it's already happened? I mean, this is a lot easier said than done. We're talking about PTSD, we're talking about being triggered. We're talking about poking the bear and having to go back, into old pain, just like you're saying. But when you think about how it's like it's already happened, right? It allows you to let go of fear. And, fear can be used when it actually needs to be used as a survival mechanism and be able to let go of situations that have already happened that don't need to trigger that anymore. It does suck. I feel you, man. I feel you. It does suck. I mean, it's the minutia of that sixth house. And it's so unglamorous, right? The fifth house is where you're like, yeah, it's so glamorous, and you feel glamorous, and you're like, hell yeah. It's the sixth house that is the complete, like, okay, this is the drudgery. This is the day in, day out, the shitty process of going through it that actually is what makes you into the person that you offer up to whoever, whatever, at seventh house. So I think if there's anything else I really want to cover, just to people to make sure their astral hygiene is really on point, to know that there's more coming, that if you feel like you're in like a bubble of security and stability, that there will still likely be the reverberations of tragedy and tumult outside of you, and to be aware of that, to keep your membrane semi-permeable, right? You want to not like shut yourself down, but at the same time, we really have to exercise some caution here. Let me see if we can get into, I think I closed all the windows. I did. Okay. That's all right. I just wanted to touch base and acknowledge people and see if anybody had anything to share, anything that they needed support on. Of course, we talked about the Marquee Tarot. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, it's the sun. It's the sun. It's the sun. I do anticipate that certain narratives are going to be closed out very soon. It may seem we just have more time to go. So keep that in mind, keep the long game in mind while be able to respond to the short game in the present, right? That's the work. And like I said, Uranus is going to station direct tomorrow, right? Tomorrow's the 18th. Uranus stations direct tomorrow. Mercury is retrograde. It's going to sextile Chiron again. It's going to, in this time, it's going to be in its retrograde. So if you remember the last time, it just happened this week, right? Where there's such a incredible opportunity to consider what it is that we want to act out. Like, what vision are we actually wanting to act out? And I think now that Mercury is in its retrograde, it's going to be a time of review and really seeing if that vision that we want to act out of ourselves is what we actually want to be doing, or maybe we just need to sit on it for a little while, right? They say don't make a lot of decisions with Mercury retrograde, and I would say that if you hadn't considered all the options already, then yeah, I wouldn't make any new decisions about anything with a Mercury retrograde. It's really about review. So if you already kind of had that experience, this is a good time to review and make sure that vision that you are part, the collective that you see yourself as part of, and how you think about it, right? How you conceptualize it. Maybe it's just needs some time to, go through the editing or proofreading process, if that makes sense. In terms of like healing old wounds, right? They just keep coming back up, and it's important to remember that too. So Uranus stations direct, like I said, those shifting landscapes within ourselves about value and currency and worth, and our literal movement of things. I mean, I have a feeling it might be a little bit more jolting than we would want it to, possibly. It just depends. And this is also too when the North Node actually officially moves into 30 degrees of Taurus. And right after that, the next day, which is Wednesday, is when the Sun at the last degree of Capricorn is going to trine that North Node. And as I talked about in the astrology, that last degree of Capricorn is the secret executive board, right? It's the decision makers. It is the body of who at the end of it all make the decisions, right? And put them into action and make executive decisions. So there will be, I think that there's a lot of different areas trying to harness this very natural energy of what's going on in terms of a cosmic time clock. So, and then right after that, the sun moves into Aquarius while the moon is in Leo. So, be prepared for I would say just be prepared for a lot of ego battles still, right? In terms of how you feel and how you express yourself in the collective context and where your attention really is. Because it's really hard to think about or act on your own self-interest with the sun in Aquarius, because that your own self-interest is inseparable from the collective in that type of configuration, which can be very can just take the wind right out of your sails. So the moon in Leo actually is going to be a good thing to just remind ourselves who we are individually and make sure we can feel that while everything else is going on around us. So like I said, full moon tonight or late this afternoon into the night, depending on where you are. And we'll see what comes up after that. So I'm sure I will be live tomorrow morning. Hopefully it'll be taking the shape of the normal transmission. I can get a card reading and we'll look at the astrology more in its detailed format. And then also Wednesday, I won't be streaming. No broadcast on Wednesday. I have other family responsibilities in the morning. And hopefully by Thursday and Friday, when we're doing getting back on a schedule, and I will hopefully be on Twitch by then. So that's the plan. Fingers crossed, guys. So does anybody have any questions? Anything they want to add? If you are catching this on the replay on BitChute or YouTube, obviously you can't see the chat, at least not for 24 hours on YouTube, but feel free to leave comments. And if you're not subscribed to the Telegram channel, you can do that through the description box below. And there's a growing interaction there that's getting very vibrant, and there's a lot of support. Like, we're all there to kind of support each other, not even kind of, we're all there to support each other through territory that is unknown to pretty much all of us, right? It's not, and it's not really meant to. I think that's kind of the whole point, right? Is that we can either just repeat history and go back into the same process and do it all over again, or we can look at things differently and actually innovate. And that's a very strong Aquarian thing. So that's something to look forward to in terms of the sun in Aquarius, if we can meet that challenge, right? Innovation, looking towards the future, and being able to really, I don't want to say capitalize, but really be able to harness the power of the collective and put our focus on innovation and solving problems, solving collective problems. And that's a big part of the Aquarian. I think that's part of the Aquarian nature too. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Like I said, everything you need is in the description box below. I'm going to be offering a starseed reading. There's going to be a special offer for starseed readings that I'm going to put out either today or tomorrow. You can find me on Telegram so that you can actually get the promotional material, or what you can do is sign up for my email list, which is easily done through my website. Again, all in the description box below. And that way you can get emails when I actually release a lot of, I do all the announcements for special readings and new services and things like that, all go through the email list. So you can sign up for that too. And if you're interested in your starseed markings, but you don't have a lot to invest right now, there's going to be an option to do that could be a lot more affordable. And of course, if you want to dive deep, that's where a lot of the real healing and transmissions come through, and that'll be an option as well. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. And hopefully I will see you tomorrow for getting back onto a schedule for the daily medicine transmission. Bye, guys.